Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. We are back to a taped video with a topic. I actually did have time to research a topic to talk about. Before we go into it, I hope everyone enjoys the new audio. I did purchase a new audio setup for home, and I think so far it sounds really good. So let me know in the comment sections how you like the new audio setup. This is a Shure SM58 with the Shure connection, and I highly recommend if you're going to start a YouTube channel, this is a good little package. It'll end up costing a little under $200 for the whole package, but shout out to my Patreon for being able to front the bill for the audio upgrade here. So if you're interested in supporting the channel for more upgrades for the channel, you enjoy these type of market videos, you want to give back, give me a little bit of tip for all the advice that I give, definitely go check out my Patreon. There is a tier for the Market Monday, people who enjoy the Market Monday. So also, if you are looking to invest in sealed product, it is also a great place to pick up sealed product. Everything above the $10 tier does have offers for cheaper sealed product. I think if you sign up for our little tier that allows you to, the $10 tier allows you to buy five products at distributor price. And right now there's some pretty good distributing price going on. We are seeing a mass exodus in sealed product by distributors. There's boxes as cheap as $65 from older sets that are being sold at the moment. And if you think that Magic singles or sealed product long term is a good route to go, that is definitely a good venue for you. So go check that out, patreon.com/RogueDeckBuilder. All right, on to the kind of the nitty-gritty of the topic. I've had a lot of people reach out to me about Rudy's video. He released the total print run numbers for Commander 2017. He says he's going to release all the information he has on print runs from the history of Magic, or at least going back to at least the ones that he has. And he talks about what's called fruit running, or just how this, what we like to call insider trading, is the term that would be used if this was a market that was regulated by the federal government. This is something that is usually illegal, that if there is being information that is leaked to certain parts of the public and not the entire public, that is considered insider trading, and that is strictly forbidden in the stock market. So my first experience with insider trading in Magic the Gathering was Tarmogoyf. Now, Tarmogoyf, I had a little bit of privy to information because at the time I was traveling with Cool Stuff Inc., and a lot of the vendors hang out together and they talk. And there was a lot of buzz going around at the Modern Masters 2013 in Vegas. Modern Masters was actually released about the same time as the Modern Masters tournament in Vegas, and it was kind of like the first big influx of inventory into the system, or supply into the system, was this massive tournament. This was the first tournament that we broke 5,000 participants. In fact, no one even thought that there would be near this amount of players, and they ended up having to cap it around 5,500. And at this tournament, there was at least 5,500 participants getting 6 booster packs a piece. There's also something going on where you got at least 1 extra booster pack just for showing up to the pack per win. It was like you got a pack and you played with that pack. I can't remember what they called out those type of tournaments, but anyway, there's a lot of supply that entered into the market. But look what happened that day. The day of the tournament, Tarmogoyf went from $110 to $140, and this was kind of unheard of, as you'd think that more supply entering into the field or into the marketplace would equal a price dip, not a price increase. Well, I was privy to knowledge because I got to see a certain representative of Star City Games with a wad, and we're talking a wad, I'm talking a massive wad of $100 bills, going around to all the vendors and buying Tarmogoyfs for $100 each. And then they bumped it up to 103, then 105. I think they capped it at 110 that weekend. But the going price of Tarmogoyfs being sold by most vendors was around the $100 mark, was between 80. So we can look at Future Sight when the release of Modern Masters came out. The second release was right here, 115 for right when it was released, 113 right when it was released for the Future Sight version of Tarmogoyf. A few weeks before, we're down in the 90s. So I mean, that's the whole thing, is people were trying to mimic the Future Sight pricing. So they're being competitive with the GP. They were doing around, I would say, between $80 and $100, until Star City Games, with their wad of cash, came around and bought up every copy of Tarmogoyf at the GP. In fact, they were big time announcing it. Like they were going around to all the tables, all these people, hey, we'll buy your Tarmogoyfs, $100 cash in hand right now. And, you know, some of the other vendors followed suit. But the rumor mill, and this is the only thing that actually makes sense, is that somehow Star City Games had got a hold of the exact print numbers of Modern Masters 3 and made a decision based upon the amount of Tarmogoyfs entering into the mix, and just were able to predict that the trend of Modern was definitely going like crazy. So they decided that day to buy up all the Tarmogoyfs and maybe sit on a loss. Also simultaneously, what was very, very suspicious is if you went to Star City Games, their own website, or if you went to their own vendor place, they weren't selling Tarmogoyfs. It was like they completely said out of stock. They turned all of their inventory down from, I think previous before that there was plenty in stock, to none in stock. You couldn't even buy them from Star City Games. They kept their low price. It was like $89.99 or $99.99, and then went around and then bought up all the Tarmogoyfs for that price. So it absolutely does happen. I'm going to echo here with Rudy. We've seen some other things that have been very, very suspicious. Right before Bitter Blossom was reprinted, there was a max exodus by certain vendors of Bitter Blossom, and the same held true for Inkmoth Nexus in Modern Masters 2015, when we all thought it was going to get a reprint and it didn't. Suspiciously, before that information, before the full set was released, there was a bunch of vendors that bought out Inkmoth Nexus. Now that could have just been a risky spec, but a lot of these bigger vendors do not like to take unnecessary risks. They want to be safe with their investments. And those were very, very suspicious. We've seen multiple other ones throughout the history of Magic the Gathering Finance of these very suspicious buyouts and sellouts of particular cards. So this causes a huge disruption in the marketplace. It gives an unfair advantage to those who have it, and it is definitely illegal. If somehow it was taken to court, I don't think that it would hold up that this is just some silly trading card game. Whenever there's money involved, this is something where, you know, lawsuits could definitely occur, or the federal government could audit this sort of practice, and there could be a lot of people actually going to jail for this sort of thing. So it's highly, highly illegal, but it does happen in the Magic the Gathering finance world. So keep that in mind. With Wizards kind of burning down the whole establishment, this could get very scary. Like the whole thing that MG Finance has been able to, we've been under the radar as far as the federal government is concerned. A lot of trading has been happening. In fact, every trade that you do at your local game store, every time you actually trade a person, technically you should be writing that off on taxes, as it's whenever any sorts of goods change hands, you have to pay tax on it. And it's a stupid, don't get me started on the federal government. I don't like the federal government. I don't like the amount of taxes that we have to pay. I'm a libertarian. I hate, I'm not a big fan of socialism. I'm not a big fan of corporatism, or I'm not a big fan of this unholy marriage that we have between big banks, big government, and big corporations. I think for the little guy, it makes it very, very tough to compete. And one of the ways is just the tax code, or everything that we are supposed to keep track of. It just becomes too much of a headache for the little guy, whereas the big corporations can they can come to this they have the lawyers, they have the accountants, they have everything, and they can come to this like formula that makes them money. But it's hard for the little guy to kind of to replicate what they do. So anyway, that's what I'm going to talk about. If anyone has any specific questions with how this happens in MG Finance, I'll be glad to talk to you. But I just want to make everyone aware this kind of nonsense does happen. It does affect the market. And it's getting very scary, though, with Rudy just definitely burning down the entire industry with this. I mean, he's going public with this sort of thing. So on to my next topic, though, which is something that is making a lot of buzz right now. It's the Challenger decks and the Duel decks. So Duel decks are being replaced with Challenger decks. So here we have Wizards flip-flop yet again, because the Challenger decks used to be called event decks, and they're very unsuccessful. The only time people bought them is if there was enough value in the event decks, and if there was enough value, I actually think one of the worst value ones was actually the one that played the best out of the box, but no one bought it just because it wasn't worth the value. And I think it's like a catch-22 for Wizards. So Challenger decks at this time, they're saying they're going to be 30, I believe they're going to be $30. Yeah, they're going to be $30 here. And they're supposed to be competitive out the gates. So design has been pretty bad at following trends. Talk about like Saheeli combo, they didn't see that. There have been a lot like Seed Rhino, they didn't see the power of Seed Rhino. There have been in the past standards a lot of times when the research and development or the design, the gameplay team has just not been able to predict the winners and losers of their upcoming standard formats. Again, Smuggler's Copter, that they didn't see the power level of Smuggler's Copter, and even Gideon, a lot of people didn't see the power. A lot of these things. So I have a hard time really putting my faith in the Challenger decks actually being playable at a $30 price tag. And the only way that they can really make them playable is to pack them full of uncommons and commons that are extremely playable. And what this does is it causes like a huge rift in the market. So I like it when everything is reprinted fairly, when they don't just pick like this happens when a Courser of Crewfix is in a specific event deck. Then what ends up happening is Courser of Crewfix is bottomed down to nothing, and then cards that don't hit the color combination actually go pretty high up in price. And so there's a discrepancy between decks. It's almost like that Wizards picks winners and losers based upon the price of a deck. You'll just see a lot of people play a specific deck. So for example, in the next standard, if they hit a archetype with this Challenger deck and it goes down to like 150 for the entire deck list, because you can get the vast bulk of the deck in the Challenger deck, whereas say that's a red-green deck, and whereas a black-blue deck does not get a Challenger deck, even though it does say Challenger decks, plural. We don't know how many they're going to release. Say the blue-black, though, is the second best deck or even the best deck, and it doesn't get any reprints, and it costs $400. So you have this huge twice to three times price discrepancy in the standard format that was just going to make certain people gravitate towards Challenger decks. And it actually even starts establishing a meta based upon a price point. So keep that in mind. I hate the Challenger decks because I think that it gives reprints into an area that doesn't need reprints and takes away reprints from an area that I do believe can be positively affected by reprints. So I like the dual decks in the past because dual decks do allow for necessary Pauper, Modern, and just Commander, uncommons and commons especially, to enter the marketplace. And they give you a nice little unique niche. It allows you to predict trends. And when the supply runs out of these dual decks, a lot of times these cards recover. And I've really liked investing in dual deck products because they've had a pretty good return on value throughout the years. So this is, I think, is a bad move for MTG Finance because the Challenger decks standard, look at Kaladesh. Kaladesh has just been completely murdered in the overall value. The card that I love to show with Kaladesh is Toolcraft Exemplar. This was a card that has been a mainstay in an archetype, and this archetype is still being played. I played against it last night, Mardu Vehicles, and it's gone nowhere. And this poor card, you can actually find, I've got these sold. I finally took them off Cardsphere because I have too many Toolcraft Exemplars being sold to me between 20 and 15 cents. That just shows you the supply of this card was just completely bonkers. And the same thing can be said for Scrap Heap Scrounger. I don't think that Kaladesh will ever recover. I think the supply of this set is just insanely unlimited. I mean, it's I want to see the exact, I'd like to see print numbers and things like that. I think the standard showdown packs have also negatively affected Kaladesh because they all started during Kaladesh's height. And so it's just been, the market has just been flooded with rares from Kaladesh. So they built a Challenger deck, for example, and called it Mardu Vehicles, and even threw even more of these cards. These sort of rarities would almost be bumped down to uncommon, definitely lower than like Fatal Pushes. Speaking of a card like Fatal Push, this could give the Challenger decks a little bit of flexibility to reprint those. And so I want to warn everyone going forward about commons and uncommons, investing in them, the Abrades, the Harness Lightnings, the Aether Hubs, the Fatal Pushes, because I think the Challenger decks, if they're going to murder anything, it's going to be the prices of those particular cards. And what this ends up happening too is when they design a set, they're going to make sure that there's $30 worth of cards in it. And a lot of times they fail to realize exactly why the supply demand is affecting the price at a certain point. And a Challenger deck becomes what we call critical mass that ends up destroying the value of cards because it pushes it over the point of supply versus demand to where the supply is way heavier than the demand, and then those cards just become worthless. So I hate this move. I think it's an incredibly terrible move to go over to these challenger decks. And it's just, yeah, I don't think that Wizards can play God here. I think it's hard for them to create they've got a team. They even brag here. We have a team throw of successful ex-pros. They're going to watch the Grand Prix and the Pro Tours, but how fast can they get this to market? So that's the whole thing. We're going to get like yesteryears challenger decks. So for example, we'd get Mardu, or maybe we would get Teamer Energy, but what would happen if Ixalan would have had a lot of hits? And Teamer Energy would have, or maybe they would have, they're like, okay, for this event deck, we're going to do Torrential Gearhulk. We're going to do UR Torrential Gearhulk. And they failed to realize that one of the big pieces was the Fumarole that rotated. And then all of a sudden people have all these like red Hour of Devastation and Torrential Gearhulks that just can't hold any value. And then the $30 product becomes a joke again. And it's just like, my faith in Wizards be able to design a product is very, very low. And I think they have a track record of doing so. Just look at most of these event decks they've done in the past. Most of them fell flat on their face. You can go check out any of Tulare Community College reviews on them, and the vast majority of them have been reviewed very poorly because Wizards has just either missed the mark, where Tulare Community College talks about it becomes a product for no one because they've focused on the past for, new player. All right, new player wants a deck. So it's going to be something that's fairly easy to play out the box. So Ram It Up Red, for example. Even though I think Ram It Up Red has a lot of lines that are the correct lines to take, and newer players actually struggle with the deck because it doesn't just autoplay it like some people want to say. But for example, they're okay. So, but a lot of those cards are very accessible to begin with, so new players don't really need them. Vendors are selling them for cheaper than the challenger deck sells them for. It's just a better bang for your buck to go to a local game store and buy that rather than go with the challenger decks. And it's just it becomes like a product for no one when they focus on too many aspects. Then it becomes a product for no one. So it's, who cares about the box? It's going to be flimsy. It's going to be bad. The spin down life is going to be stupid. A reference guide, they're going to try to autopilot a deck, sure. It's just something that I'm not excited for. Whereas Duel Decks, a lot of times we did get some new reprints with new art, with the foil version of something that sometimes hasn't existed before, and it's just, I think these did a lot better, especially long term. Usually the Duel Decks did appreciate in value over time, whereas event decks, you can still go back to a ton of event decks and they're still miserable. Look at I believe it's the Born of the God mono black event deck that has 0 value in it. It's just an awful product. The same can be said about a lot of those that came out in that time period. So let's just look at the speculation for Duel Decks, Elves versus Inventors. We do know that it'll be coming out in April 2016, so that's coming out very quickly. A lot of people are like, well, Dominaria. Dominaria's not going to be out by then, so I don't think there's going to be any sort of Inventors from Dominaria. This is going to be a very focused Kaladesh set, and the Elves might have some, from Magic Origins type focal point. And the last thing, though, with the Duel Decks is, Elves has been done already, Elves versus Goblins, and Goblins Arzigot versus Merfolk. And I think that they're going to showcase a lot of the strategies that might not have happened versus the old Elf. So I'm not thinking that Burstlore Ranger or the Priest of Titania or Well-Wisher will be in this particular one. I think it's going to be more of like a modern introduction to Elves. And so the first thing that I think is going to go, so let's just look up Elves in a modern deck. So let's just look at what's a good elf from the old school modern deck that I know is being played. Dwaynian's Elite. I bet that there will be a lot of these in the deck, and so this is $1.24, so this is a massive sell right now. So I think this will be a multiple 2, 3, 4 in the deck, so you should get out of the Elite. It's just too much risk. This is also starting to hit the point where Wizards wants to reprint it. And one thing I've noticed with recent Duel Decks is they tend to reprint newer stuff rather than older stuff. And I think that's also a mistake as well. I think it's just easier. They've got it all. The artwork and everything is already formatted. And it's just less expensive to get more recent reprints. Commander's been kind of trending that way as well. So Dwaynian's Elite, I think, is going to be a definite reprint. And if you have any copies of this, this is an absolute sell. So let's just look at the modern deck at the moment. This is the Vizier of Remedies, Infinite Combo. Azuri could definitely be, it probably will be. I would say either Azuri or I don't think they'd go with Dwaynian. or however you say that name. I think Azuri is the right call for the foil that's going to be on the front of the box. So I think that Azuri is also a sell, and I highly wouldn't be surprised if Collected Company was going to be reprinted as a rare in the box. I think I wish they would. This would be the time to reprint those type of cards. I know a lot of times they've shied away from reprinting a card that has some value, because then all the dirty speculators just pick it up and the casual players can't. Oh, whatever. But you can kind of see Devoted Druid needs a reprint in this one. I think that this one is going to be too much of a liability, and Nettle Sentinel. So those are my 3 sells, or 4 sells. Azuri, the Archdruid probably would be in here too. It gets reprinted all the time. Heritage Druid could also be in here too. But all of these cards are very, very, very susceptible to reprint. So there's a lot of juicy stuff in Elves, and that's why I think they'll be focusing more on this modern era rather than the Legacy era, or kind of the Pauper or the old school Elves versus Goblins type dual deck. So then we have the Inventors is more all over the place. So for Inventors, I've just pulled up MTGO here, and we're going to look at anything that says Inventor in its name. There's not a lot of them. We have the Inventor's Fair and the Inventor's Goggles, but we do have a lot of things called Artificers. So it could go a lot of different ways. Like it could go the white, and it could go white with Inventors. There's plenty of white Inventors, like the Blade Splicer type thing with Golems. We probably think that there's either going to be an equipment focal point, or so it could be like red-white equipments. We could actually be surprised. I think it's going to be blue-red though, because and I think that the Elves will be black-green, and that way we'll get like Shaman out of the mix too. There might be, I mean, and that's the whole Origins was black-green, so kind of the Lorwyn theme to it. But so I think black-green versus red-blue is probably the route that's going to go, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's white-blue, and even something like Stoneforge Mystic ends up being kind of the chase card in the I think it's going to be the chase card is going to be either Walking Ballista or Hangerback Walker as the card on the front. I don't think it's going to be like Heart of Koran. I don't think it's going to be, of course, a card like the Smuggler's Copter, and I don't think equipment is going to be the focal point. So I think it will be a lot of the Kaladesh block type cards mixed in with some old school. You could even see Wormcoil Engine be there. I mean, the sky's the limit. Mirrodin / Kaladesh artifacts are going to be the focal point to this. So I think that Whirler Virtuoso, or I think Whirler Rogue, I don't know if they're going to go the energy theme to this, are going to be a pivotal point to this for the uncommon slots. So we might see a go wide strategy, go wide versus go wide, because Else is a go wide. Or if we just see that the Inventors go big. And so this one's all over the place of what it could have in it. So anywhere between the Golem Splicer theme, the Wormcoil engines. As far as anything that has any sort of value, though, Galvanic Blast could be in here for a number of artifacts. I think Galvanic Blast is something that needs a reprint. Those are the type of cards I'd be looking at for sells. Again, I don't see black or green being colors that they're going to go with this. Red, blue makes sense to me. We'll see the box pretty soon, I would say, as it's coming out in April. And just keep in mind, once we do see that first promo list, I think we're going to get a better realization of what's going to be in on this particular deck. So even like Thopter Spy Network type cards to have a more of a Thopter go wide strategy. But the cards I would definitely sell: Hangerback Walker, Walking Ballista. I think those are too much of a liability. Who else is known inventors? There's like Pia Nalar or Pia and Karan Nalar that deal with inventions. You even have like Dak Vaden type cards. I don't think mythics. They do have mythics in the past though. Like, I really think it's going to be Wormcoil Engine, to be honest. I think Wormcoil Engines, look at the masterpieces, and there might be one that's chosen from the Kaladesh masterpieces and just thrown in the deck. And we could see some improvised type strategies. We could see some metalcraft type strategies, and definitely some vehicles type strategies. There really isn't a lot of vehicles besides the Sky Silver and Consul's Flagship that are that doesn't hold any value either. It's just like I said, they're gonna have a hard time eking out the value from a lot of this kind of stuff unless they go, back to some old cards like the Master of Ethereum. So if anything out of the Affinity era, anything out of, I think I definitely would focus on the artifact blocks to try to figure out where they're going to go with this. So Artificers does have quite a few. The Grand Architect, for example, there's a lot of cards. Let's just look at rares and mythics, for example, to see where we can find some inspiration of what they could be doing. So mythic rares and rares. It's not going to allow me to do. So mythic rares, Feld in the third path, the Visionary Architect, and I don't think either one of those. Let's look at rares, an old school rare that might be worth money. They used 2 mythics last time though. For now, there's Mishra. I doubt they'd go into black though. Like I said, I think they're going to stick. Pian Carandalar. We have, is the Master Transmuter worth anything? I can't remember if that one's still worth any money. The Arkham Dagson is definitely an inventor. He could definitely be in this particular deck. The Grand Architect, like we said before, both the Pian Carandalar and Pian Nalar are definitely there. The Chief Engineer, that's definitely something that invents, and I'm sure I'm missing some inventing type cards that could be just thrown in the mix. And I wouldn't count White out and have Stoneforge Mystic in there either. So anyway, that's kind of the topic. I don't really have any huge speculations. Talking about the market real quick, still going back to Iconic Masters. Iconic Masters is looking to be a huge bust still. We are still seeing the Iconic Masters going down in value. I think that going over to Unglued, a lot of the money got kind of siphoned off of what would naturally go into the kind of the card market for Unglued lands. And even though lands are good, I mean, it's any of the old school lands that people used to go after, I think we're going to see a bit of a flood of them into the market as the people will replace them. I already know a lot of commanders have replaced a lot of the old full art lands with the new ones. And it might be time to actually kind of, I don't know, there's just so much supply of even the Hour of Devastation and Amonkhet and the Battle for Zendikar type full art lands that I don't think they're investable either. What I'm trying to say is Magic's losing a lot of specialness. They're losing a lot of things that they can do, and I think they need to kind of gear that back. Just let the market play out. If Wizards was smart, they'd actually halt a lot of production in 2018. It's hard for companies to do that because they have their investors to think of, but I think it'd be healthier for the game. If they want like a good strong 2019, 2020, they definitely need to step back, and I don't know if they're capable of doing such. So Iconic Masters is a good indication of that. We also even have another set coming out. We're almost below that $470 mark now, with key cards like Mana Drain still hemorrhaging value. Horizon Canopy and Aether Vial are still above the $30 mark, so that's nice for those two. But Flusterstorm and Cryptic Command are going most likely to go. Flusterstorm, I think Cryptic Command will outvalue Flusterstorm in the long run. Same thing with Ancestral Vision. I even think Thoughtseize. I think Flusterstorm will be lower, even lower down below Elish Norn Thoughtseize type area. So Flusterstorm still has a lot of value to decrease. Grove still has a lot of value to decrease, but the rest of these are hopefully starting to flatten out. I would get rid of, wouldn't buy into anything like Magus of the Moon, as that anything that had the low supply aspect to it, still get rid of. But some of these are starting to look very promising. How low can these cards go? There is a lot of staples in Commander and Modern. There just wasn't enough cards like the Aether Vial and Horizon Canopy to make the set worthwhile. So Iconic Masters still has a bit to go. I think if Vetter goes down to the $450 mark, that's probably where it's going to settle down. That's my prediction with the Iconic Masters. And then, though, we're in a kind of a weird period to invest. I still think we're going into a bear market. I think that you'd be smart to sell off as many cards as possible and hold your money and invest in things when we see Magic, if we see Magic recover. Now remember, bear markets are a great time for buying. How many people wish they had a time machine and had some money back in 2008 to invest in stocks or housing market back then? You would have made out like a bandit. The people that didn't get wrecked in the last big financial crisis made out like bandits. And this is your opportunity to do so with Magic. So short sell, come back in mid 2018, early 2019, and I think you'll thank yourself for that. I think that if Wizards continues down this path of the mass reprints, we're going to see the market's never going to be able to eat this up. We are having at least a significant drop in the player base. We are having a significant increase in the reprints, all that spells disaster. And I think that it's a time for everyone to be smart and invest smart. Right now on Cards Fair, I've dropped everything to 51%, and I'm still having a lot of people sell cards to me. If you're looking to sell out of Magic, Cards Fair still is a pretty good way. I think you do after, even if you cash out of Cards Fair, it's you're gonna be higher than the average buy list. So that's always an option for you to do if you're looking for a way to get out of Magic. eBay is going to kill you with fees. TCG is going to kill you with fees. You don't sell anything on eBay if it's unless it's $6 or above, I would say, to start making any sort of significant value. What I suggest, though, is a platform like Cards Fair. We will have the Cards Fair people on to talk about their service more in depth. What I'm trying to do is move a lot of my equity, a lot of my value over just to Cards Fair cash and not cash out. Just sit on it. Keep offering 41% for cards, and if people send me that, that's fine, because I don't think I lose money at that point. With Cards Fair is already a little bit lower than like TCG Mid or your average vendor, and then you get a 49% discount on top of that by putting it at 51%. I'll pick up those $2, $3, $4 cards all day long, and then use it as trade fodder to trade up to the more expensive cards once Magic does recover. But anyway, that's my tip for the week. We're approaching that 30-minute time mark, which I don't like to go over on Market Mondays. If you have any questions, you can definitely at me at Rogue Deck Builder, or email me at roguedeckbuilder@gmail.com. If there's any specific topic you'd like to talk about, go more in depth with anything financial related, definitely let me know. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.